Welcome to Off the Record, a legal podcast.
Hello and welcome to Off the Record, a legal podcast with attorney Rhett Burney. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist. In today's episode, we'll break down how divorce affects wills, trusts, beneficiary designations, and more, and why updating your estate plan is a vital step after any major life change. Stay tuned as we dive into practical tips and expert insights on navigating these complex legal matters. Rhett, it's great to have you back. Great to see you.
Yeah, fun stuff. Good to see you again, Kevin. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great, and I hope you are too. So what are the key steps someone should take to update their estate plan after a divorce?
That's one of the things that often people forget about. They're so focused on going through the divorce, getting the property fixed, getting the divorce itself, and they forget those other documents after the fact, like redoing their will, redoing their life insurance policies, redoing the powers of attorney, maybe even their trust, changing their house titles around. They just forget about that because it's just not on their top of mind. So you have to be cognizant.
There's kind of a laundry list of things to do, I suppose, after you get divorced.
Once the judge says you're no longer married, there's some things that you really need to attend to in order to kind of seal everything up in a nice, neat package.
Yeah. How do you recommend people get started?
Look at what you currently have. Some people don't have anything in place. They don't have a will, don't have any powers of attorney, and so forth. See what you have. If you don't have it, you need it. If you do have it, sit down with a lawyer, bring your divorce decree in with you and let them look at that as well, just to make sure that once the lawyer starts drafting the documents that are needed, that there's no contradictions between the various documents.
Okay. And how can a divorce settlement impact the distribution of assets in your estate plan?
In South Carolina, where I am, fortunately, we have laws that say that if you happen to forget to change your will or your life insurance policies or anything like that, your beneficiaries, that once you have that divorce or annulment, we rarely get people in marriages annulled, but once you have that divorce, that spouse that you had on those policies or in your will, they're treated as though they're dead. They've predeceased you. So fortunately, we have laws like that in place. Didn't used to have that, so you would have people who would get remarried and die, and their spouse would find out that the ex-wife or the ex-husband inherited everything. But fortunately, the legislature in South Carolina realized that people are not always familiar with what they need to do after the fact, and took that upon themselves, which is a good law, to correct those types of events that could occur if people forget to update their wills and their life insurance policies. But you don't want to ever chance it. Don't just rely upon the law because there's so many other factors involved or could come up. You really just need to get it done, change everything, update everything, just so you're not embattled in some type of litigation later on.
Yeah, that's a very smart law. Good for you, government.
Yeah, that's
Came
a good one.
for us.
It's a good one. Well, here's the other thing. If you do forget to do it, you're dead. So you're leaving all that trouble with your maybe new spouse or your children or whatever. It doesn't.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it affects them, and you want them to be thankful that you've cleared it all up ahead of time.
Yeah, that you didn't leave a mountain of stuff to deal with.
Yes.
If a person gets divorced, is their ex-spouse still legally entitled to anything or serve as an executor under their existing will? Like how does all that work?
Yeah, the law we were just talking about, it takes care of all of that. Yeah, they no longer can serve as their personal representative, executor, all those fiduciary duties that they would normally have under a will if they were given that power. That's all done away with. But people always want lawyers to tell them what's going to happen. There may be a small nuance in that particular case where that law may not apply. It should apply 99.9% of the times, but people get very creative, and that's what causes great lawsuits. It's just the nuances and the different facts.
How much better do things go when you had a plan before the divorce versus trying to catch up afterwards?
Yeah, plans are always great, right?
Yeah.
Always plan. And as lawyers, we make more money when people don't plan because it's harder to fix a problem once it occurs. It's easier to prevent a problem. So it's just being responsible. People work hard for what they've accumulated during their life, and at the end of the day, do you want it to go to maybe a stranger? Your estate go to a stranger or an ex-spouse or a stepchild or what have you? No, you don't. You really need to finish it, bring it over the finish line, clean everything up. Usually, a divorce lawyer can probably look at your estate plan and see, or not, they can give you a referral and just get it done. It doesn't cost that much to fix a problem before it.
Yeah. And what happens to beneficiary designations on something like life insurance policies or retirement accounts after a divorce?
Yeah, once you're divorced, a spouse would be done away with by law, but it's always a good time to just review everything and see, who are your beneficiaries? How did you set everything up? Did you set anything up? When people ask us to review their wills or their estate plans, typically, or they want to know when they should come back and review them. So usually when a life event happens, that's a death, a remarriage, a divorce, a birth, or an employment change. Those are kind of the milestones that we look at. But especially after a divorce, just look at your life insurance policies, your retirement accounts, see how those are dealt with the beneficiaries. Because even though the law in South Carolina says that your spouse or your ex-spouse is no longer treated as a beneficiary on a 401k or life insurance policy or will, what happens if that 401k administrator doesn't like what the South Carolina law says? That could just start unnecessary legal expenses trying to show this administrator sitting in a plan administrator sitting in New York, state of Washington, and showing them that, hey, South Carolina has a law that says this. Just clean it up so you don't even have to take that step.
Well, that law that you mentioned, that cleans a lot of stuff up, huh? Or that clears a lot of things up.
It does, but Kevin, people are so transient these days that as lawyers, we used to deal with everything in South Carolina. Now, with people coming into the state of South Carolina and life insurance companies being out of the state or in another state, and 401k companies being somewhere else, they have laws too, and their lawyers are familiar with their laws, and it may just cost money to show these plan administrators or life insurance policies that they're wrong if they think, hey, this ex-spouse is the beneficiary. No, it's not what it says in South Carolina, but you're going to have to go through the expense of hiring a lawyer to show them that they are wrong. And why do that when you can go and spend that money now and get it done correct?
So you might say that law covers this too, but I was curious about, should you be revising your power of attorney and healthcare proxy documents, all that kind of stuff? Is that kind of all taken care of too?
Yeah, a little gray area there, but I would, because you would be, an ex-spouse would be in a fiduciary capacity under a power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney. Do you really want your new spouse to be sitting in the hospital with your ex-spouse, and you're having to fight the hospital staff who doesn't know the law to convince them that, no, the ex-spouse doesn't have a say-so because of this law? No, you don't want to be in that position.
Right.
You don't want to be your new spouse standing in a bank window trying to convince them that this ex-spouse no longer has any authority because their name may be on that power of attorney. Get them off, get it taken care of. So the law's clear, but the application of it may not be as clear when you're dealing with non-lawyers in the business.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there's other people involved in the process, and they don't necessarily understand the law.
Right. And just a little aside. In South Carolina, when a notary notarizes a document, we don't have to have a raised seal, but other states require that seal. Mm-hmm. So we fight all the time saying South Carolina is a valid document. The other state, they say it's not, even though South Carolina really controls. But why go through that argument if you can fix it in advance?
Absolutely. Can a trust protect assets from being divided in a divorce settlement in South Carolina?
Yeah, we get creative with those. You really have to, if you're going through the divorce, you kind of have to look at the timing of the trust. What does it say? You can get into some fraudulent situations there. That gets very complicated, probably too complicated for this podcast, but a trust can help protect you, but just generally. So I would say, after the fact, after your divorce, go back and look at that trust, because again, you would hate for some court down the road just to interpret it a different way than what was intended. And that happens. Remember, judges are not perfect, right? And even though the law may be black and white, you still have to have a judge make a determination sometimes. And all lawyers can tell you horror stories where the judge just got it wrong. And we have the appellate courts who can go back and fix it, but that takes years. So do it right the first time to save money, trouble, headaches down the road.
So when you're saying do it right, are you meaning like right out of the gate even? Because no one thinks they're going to get divorced, obviously, or at least I would think most people don't think they're going to get divorced when they get married. So are you saying like when you get married, get everything planned out just in case something happens?
No, what I'm saying is, yeah, when you get married, obviously that's a life-changing event. Go ahead and
Sure.
get your estate plan in order then, because you can't predict whether you're going to get divorced. Don't plan it as though you're going to get divorced. Plan it as though you're going to be married forever. But if you do have to go through a divorce, don't waste any time once you're divorced to look at your documents and make sure that they're in order. Because I have seen people walk out of the courthouse and die that fast. Things happen like that, you know. And human nature, what's human nature? We're all procrastinators, right?
Yes, yes.
Kevin, you still don't have a will yet, do you?
You know, I was wondering if how long it was going to take for you to ask me that. It's on the docket for 2025.
Yeah. There's a lot of time between now and then. But, you know, here I joke with you about that, but it's a serious discussion.
It is.
And I've told you time and time again, your wife's probably told you, you know, you get children and what have you. But that's how we do it as humans. We tend to push off those things that we think may not happen or won't happen soon because we all think we're going to die when we get old.
Right.
Well, we'll eventually die, but when is that? And we don't know. And I make my living off of people who don't plan just as much as I do off of people who do plan. But when cases come in our door, those cases that are having to fix something that someone could have fixed earlier, those become much more difficult. And it's hard on people who really didn't want to be involved in that, right? Would your new spouse or your children want to be involved in the problems you could have fixed beforehand? No. You know, do them a big favor. If you don't like yourself, at least love them and do them a big favor and get that all resolved. Because people often think, oh, if I die, everybody knows how it's supposed to be divided up. Guess what? They forget. Many people put their hands out. So get it in order now. Sit down with a lawyer now and see what you can do to prevent problems later on.
If there's anybody listening who's like me and needs to get this taken care of, like what are the things right out of the gate? Like what's the biggest priorities?
You know, depending upon the way we do it in my practice, people came in and they said, I can only afford one document. We will look at where they are in their life, you know, what the demographics of their life look like. Do they have children? Are they married? And we may say, you know what, right now you don't need a will. It's good to have, but if you may not need one. But you know, I tell people first look at the deed to your house because you can set that up so it's a joint right of survivorship deed with your spouse. Look at your power of attorney where you can name your spouse to act as though they are you if needed. Then look at your will. You know, in some cases, we need a trust in there, but not everybody needs a trust. Now, I've named those documents. Don't do them necessarily in that order. I think you need to do them all at the same time. So there's some cohesiveness there. Not everybody can afford that. It's not that expensive, but I understand it's money. So sit down with a lawyer who can explain to you and give you, if you can only afford some of it, what documents you need at that appropriate time. But even then, calendar it so you come back and finish the deal, right? Finish the document so you don't leave a gap there because it's those gaps that can cause problems and cost money.
All right, I want to get a little crazy here and give you a hard question. All right, so how does a divorce impact the plans you already have for supporting maybe a former spouse or children in your estate plan?
Okay, that's a great question. Well, you may go through a divorce and lose everything, right? So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you give or what you give to somebody. If you don't have it, they're not getting it. You know, you may have to you may have set up your estate plan. You may have gone through your divorce, but when you set your estate plan up, your life was one way. Now, several years later, as you go through your divorce, your life may be completely different. So you're going to have to look at how you did everything. And we don't want to, right? We don't want to. It's boring. It's just not over there, you know, calling your name, yelling at you all the time, Kevin. So, you know,
only when I talk to you.
Yeah, until you talk to me. And I'm doing it out of love, Kevin.
I know.
Because really, like I tell you, if you don't do it, lawyers make more money when they have to fix the problems, right? Not to solve the problem. So, yeah, it's just a good time to review everything if you go through a divorce because that may affect what you set up previously for your children or for your spouse.
Yeah, I bet I can imagine that it gets quite a bit more complicated the more times you get divorced.
It does.
All
the
right.
business card list is a little bit longer, but yeah, it does make it more complicated.
Or shorter, depending on what contacts you don't talk to anymore.
That's right. Everybody should be divorced 4 or 5 times. You know, we do promote.
That's what you think. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'm going to write that down. 4 or 5.
Think about your lawyer, right?
Think about the poor lawyers. They need to eat too.
We need to.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Off the Record, a legal podcast with attorney Rhett Burney. For more information or to connect with Rhett, you can visit rhettburney.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Rhett, always great talking with you. Thanks for being here.
Kevin, good to see you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.